So, how do we experience life in a really positive way? Sometimes I think we all find that can be very difficult. We come up against barriers in our lives. We're experiencing things that occur because of our activities and so forth that sometimes are not comfortable. I'm really pleased to have Janet Thurgood on the show today. She is a quantum healer, and that is something that probably most of us have never heard of. I've just kind of learned a little bit more about it recently. But we're going to have an incredible conversation about how we literally can learn to come to know who we truly are, how we can heal ourselves or have someone help us to really heal ourselves to the point where we understand the goodness and the wonderful greatness of who we are, which then can change our entire life and outlook on life. So please join us.
At the end of the day, it's not about what you have or even what you've accomplished. It's about what you've done with those accomplishments. It's about who you've lifted up, who you've made better. It's about what you've given back. Denzel Washington. Welcome to Inspire Vision. Our sole purpose is to elevate the lives of others and to inspire you to do the same.
Janet, it's so great to have you on the show today. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
Oh, it's wonderful. I really enjoyed your show this morning that I had a chance to be with, and I thought that was great. But, for the audience, I'd love for you to kind of tell your story and share your story, because this concept of quantum healing is something that I think a lot of people don't understand.
Yeah. Well, thanks. Thanks, by the way, Doug, for having me on your show. I really appreciate you taking the time and letting me share my story. I think my story is really similar to a lot of people's stories. I went through 25 years of chronic autoimmune illness, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia. In my class today, I actually shared how when I was 14, I was diagnosed with mononucleosis, which is a form of the herpes simplex virus. And a lot of people get that when they're in their teens. It morphed into Epstein-Barr virus, which just led to chronic pain and suffering and brain fog. And I told people in the class today I would get strep throat 2 or 3 times a year. I just had no immune system and no vitality. And I ended up having 6 children through that time period. I ran a full-time cleaning company out of my home. I was busy in my church calling and homeschooling all of my children. Like I really pushed myself with brute force through life because I wanted to continue to live life. After selling my business and my company and putting my kids back in school because I needed the rest, my adrenals went down. I had adrenal failure, which then led to a series of near-death out-of-body experiences. And from that, I got some interesting perspective. It wasn't that I wasn't trying to impact my health and that I wasn't trying different kinds of things through nutrition and diet and exercise and all the things that they tell you to do. I'd been to hundreds of doctors and they would just scratch their heads not knowing what to do with me. But when I had that near-death out-of-body experience, I was without my body. I was outside of the body and finally free from all of that for the first time in a long time. And I gained some really interesting perspective when I became much more aware of my spirit body and my consciousness, because that's all you have when there is no body. And after that period of time, I hired a coach and a mentor who was proficient in quantum healing, at least his version. And he was able to pull me out of a really dark place. And from then I said, people need to know this. People need to know that they can resolve the pains of the past inside of themselves in order for the body to renew itself, because your body's designed to fix its own problems. And that was really how I got involved. That was how I got started. And I noticed that as he would take me into these guided meditations or these exercises that we would do to really become more self-aware, it really was an exercise in going within, taking your awareness and your consciousness and putting your attention inside rather than what we always do, which is focusing on the distractions of the external world. And we think that's us. We think the feedback is us. And so he took me on this journey deep inside of myself, and I connected with higher versions of myself, a deeper intelligence. And I remember feeling it was strangely familiar. And I said, this is exactly how it felt when I would pop out of the body when I was at my sickest. And he said, exactly. That's because what you're doing is you're going beyond the level of the conscious body. You're going into beyond the subconscious body and into the superconscious body, where you're accessing your deeper self, your highest self, the divine infinite intelligence in there. And as you engage and interact with that divine intelligence, that's the intelligence that can mend and heal and fix and reroute and rewire and get down onto a DNA level to impact change on a quantum level. Really, you're dealing with things on the non-tangible level. And what happens in the medical model is they're dealing with things on the tangible level, which is the effect. It's not really the cause. They're dealing with the effect, and they're trying to piece those things together and fix them and patch them and mend them and drug them. And what we're finding now in our world today is that's not working. People are not getting healed from our traditional paradigm of what health is and what healing is. And people want healing. I think they want to get to the root of what's causing their symptoms. And so quantum healing really allows the individual to become self-aware enough that you get down to the causal level of why your body is producing the effect that it's producing.
So is your main focus really kind of helping people who are experiencing different types of illnesses, or do you get into other areas also, such as belief systems that are literally causing them to experience life, not necessarily physically in a negative way, but potentially emotionally and mentally in a negative way?
Yeah, I love that. That's a good question. I think that it can impact every area of your life, your physical body, your mental body, your emotional body, your spiritual body, and your external world, like your relationships and your bank account. And the way that your external world unfolds is largely governed by what's happening inside of you on a superconscious level. And most of us don't know we have access to that.
So let me ask you a question. We have some mutual friends, and one of the things that I heard is you just read a lot about everything. And I appreciate that. So let me ask you a question. We look at quantum healing, okay, and I'm not sure that the audience is going to understand what that really means. So I'm going to have you explain that a little bit, and then talk a little bit about the difference between that and other processes that I'm certainly aware of, and I'm sure you are, for instance, NLP or EFT, or, all of these different ways in which practitioners, whether they're psychologists or healing practitioners or whatever, are helping people. What is quantum healing, and how does that differ from some of these other modalities?
Yeah, I don't think that it's too different. I think that we have so many different ways to express this and so many different ways to experience it. But I think ultimately it's really the same thing. What we're doing is we're going down to a non-tangible level of the cause of what created the physical manifestations in your body, your bank account, your external world. We're going to the causal level, the non-tangible level, such as beliefs, emotions, spirituality, consciousness. We're going to that level to affect change in the body. And ultimately, I think we can sum this up in one sentence, which is you're taking aspects of you that have fallen away from their state of origin, which is love. So anything that's going on inside of you that's out of harmony and out of balance, out of alignment with love, such as your emotions, your memories, the pains of the past, the unresolved traumas that are still plaguing you, that are still causing you to feel like you're not enough. when we go in there and really stare those down and look at them and resolve them and restore that energy back to love and make peace with it and become more neutral inside again, then your body has more room and more efficiency and proficiency to fix itself, because your body, again, is hardwired. It's designed to fix itself. It's designed to seek for wholeness through the intelligence that's within, but oftentimes because of drama and trauma and the pains of the past that have not been resolved and that have put us into a kind of a dissonance in the background. It becomes background noise and we forget that it's there, but it's still there, and it's out of harmony with wholeness and with balance. And so when we go find those things where they live, and I can take you through an exercise if you'd like, because it's really, that's the best way to understand what quantum healing really is, and what it does is to experience it. But once you do that and you identify, okay, where is this data that I'm storing on my hard drive that's dissonant, that's out of tune and out of touch? When you find that, then you can engage with the energy of it and bring it back into a state of love or a state of neutrality. And then it opens up space for your body to do what it's going to do, which is either heal itself or manifest another level of
another situation.
Yeah.
So you mentioned, you know, really the divine version of yourself. You've also talked about, you just mentioned, and you used the word intelligence, and you're not talking about mental intelligence, I'm sure. So, you know, I find that that can be difficult for a lot of people to understand. Everybody has their different beliefs, which I totally respect and honor. You're talking about that divine person within yourself, that intelligence within yourself. Can you explain to the audience what you're really meaning by that?
Yeah. Well, in Holy Writ, the scriptures say, God says in the scriptures, he says it. I am the same. I am the Alpha and the Omega, same yesterday, today, and forever. And if we do believe the narrative that we are the offspring or the seed of God, then we have to believe that we have the potential to be as God is. And as we are, God once was. And so for me, that divine infinite intelligence within us is the seed of creation. It's that part of us that is God-like, the same yesterday, today, and forever. It's infinite, it's eternal, it's never ending. Nothing can threaten it. So for example, here's a tangible way to describe it. When I was really, really sick, I had adrenal failure, popped out of the body. And as I popped out of the body, I remember looking at the body thinking, that looks really vaguely familiar. And it was weird to look at my body and think, wait a minute. I thought that heap of cells and dirt and water that's laying on the ground inanimate, I thought that was me. So, and I started processing and I thought, okay, if that isn't me, what is this? Because I feel like I am a conscious being still. I'm still conscious and aware and awake, if not more aware and awake and intelligent. So I began asking the question, who am I then? If I'm not my physical body or my past or my memories or what people say I am in this mortal dimension, and I can extend beyond this mortal dimension into other dimensions, I'm limitless. I'm infinite. Nothing can threaten an infinite being. So when you learn how to create an identity out of that part of yourself, it's empowering, because there is no fear, because you can't die, that part of you. You can't run out of time. You can't lose anything. Nothing can be taken from you. And like with those things out of the picture, what could you possibly have to worry about?
Well, and you know, it's interesting. I find that a lot of people don't really understand that. I mean, there's so many people that think we've been born into sin, so therefore we're naturally bad. Here you're talking about there's this divine part of us that is naturally good
Yes.
and wonderful. But here's the question. I mean, not many people, I've never had an out of body experience. Okay. Never have. And I'm not sure I want one unless I could come back.
Yeah. The good
But
news is you don't need to.
well, that was going to be my question.
Yeah.
How does a person who does not have that experience tap into themselves? Let's go even a little bit further before we get to that, because I'm going to go in order here. You talk about self-awareness, and I
Hmm.
know next year you're going to talk about that a lot, and we'll talk about that at the end of the show so that you can share
Yes.
that with
We're
the
going to devote
audience.
a whole year to that.
Yes. But what I find is that many people struggle with that self-awareness.
Yes.
Because in order to, they go through life, they're not enjoying life, there is struggles, they're experiencing all of these things, and they'll blame everything around them, they'll blame all of these types of things. How do you help people to develop that self-awareness? Because obviously if people are reaching out to you, they've already achieved some degree of self-awareness in order to be the fact that they want to reach out to you and get some help. But how do you suggest people who are listening to the show who really don't even understand what that is and what that could do for them, and the gates that could open up for them from a standpoint of life and happiness and joy? How
Oh,
do you help someone to develop that
oh.
self-awareness?
I love talking about this. This is my passion. And I do feel like this is why I was put on this earth, was to learn this the hard way and then to teach it. Because there's literally, Doug, there's nothing more empowering and healing and powerful for a human being than to understand at the core and at the root of who they spiritually are. There be a more important pursuit than self-awareness? I really don't think so. I don't think there's anything more worthy of your time and your investment financially. And one of the things that I say to all of my clients is the farther away you wander from that self, that highest self, the true self, the infinite self, the eternal self, the farther away you wander from that in your consciousness, the sicker you become, the more depressed you become, the more you struggle in your relationships and with abundance and with creation and all things in your life. You have a hard time overcoming things. You get swallowed up in the chaos. And so the answer really to remove yourself from the chaos and rise above it and overcome it is to tap into the deeper levels of your being. And so that's what I tell people when I'm out in the world is I'm a quantum healer. I take people on a journey into the uncharted waters of who they really are, for healing, for spiritual awakening, and for powerful transformation. And it will transform your life. In fact, when I get done with this little story, I would love to take your listeners through a little guided experience where they can feel and tap into their higher self and experience it.
Okay.
Because it's not really something you can wrap your mind around. You can't tell it to somebody. You can't logically get there. You have to just experience it. My mother passed away from cancer in 2017. And about a month after she died, she came to me in a vision and she stood at the foot of my bed and she did not look like her mortal body. And to this day, I keep thinking, how did I even know that was her? But I do remember the gleam in her eyes was familiar, and I just knew. My spirit just recognized that it was her, because she did not look like her mortal self. She was taller, she was more slender, she was vibrant and luminous and radiant, and probably to this day, one of the most beautiful beings I have ever laid eyes on. She looked like a goddess. And she just stood there going, look, like look, this is me. And in her discovery of herself in that way, I think she ultimately wanted to show that to me, that she discovered it. And I witnessed it, and I thought to myself, I wonder if she ever had an opportunity to glimpse that or grasp that in any way when she lived here on this earth? And the answer was no. And after that vision was over, I thought, that is a tragedy. It's tragic that a human being, as amazing as my mother was, can go through 80 years of a life here in this mortality and never even know themselves.
Well,
That's
and
tragic.
that is so true. And as we see all the turmoil that's going on in the world today, and particularly here in the United States as well as elsewhere, the question is that because they've never experienced that divine self within themselves?
Yeah. Yeah. It's heartbreaking. And, part of the problem that I feel like I face is that I can see that. I see it in people when they're walking around in life. And what's frustrating is to watch human beings deny that in themselves or belittle that in themselves or ignore it or tune it out or squash it down.
Well, and once you have that foundation, you talked a while ago, a couple of weeks ago, about ascension. And I really enjoyed that approach, where as you hit blocks in your life, you can either move up or move down. But would you explain to the audience a little bit about what ascension is based on what you're talking about? And then we can talk about that a little bit more as we get into the fact that awareness is required in order to even go through that process that you would be talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. Awareness really is that's the first step, is being awake enough and aware enough to know what you're bumping up against, what you're going through. But I think personally, people might have other definitions for um, ascension or transcending the mortal plane. But I feel like personally, I feel like we go this rodeo over and over and over in order to gain experience that will help us to wake the mortal aspects of us up to who we really are on a divine level. Because when the two merge and become as one, then I think that's godhood. I really do. A spiritual awakening through a physical body, that's not an easy process to go through. Anybody could go through that process in a spirit body because you're already pretty much aware of who you are and that infinite plane, and there's no veils or blockages. Well, maybe there are some veils, but less veils than there are in mortality. And so I think the ascension process to godhood is training up the physical body to wake up completely and totally to who you have always been and always will be. And so what separates us or makes us different from God is we're still asleep. Our physical nature, we're veiled. We live in a world filled with deception and deceit, and we have to overcome both of those obstacles. Plus, we then have to overcome the blockages that are created from trauma. When you go through trauma, the first thing that happens is you almost suck back and go, who am I? You don't know. It knocks you senseless a little bit out of who you really are, because you go into the fear, the feelings of trauma can kind of yank you out of that. For me, ascension is bumping up against the resistance of mortality and blocks and veils, right? And deception, bumping up against that. And we can either descend and fall to the ground, or we can choose to rise above those feelings and those experiences and go up a level and ascend until we come and bump up against another one and another one. And when we have overcome the world and overcome the darkness in the world, the evil in the world, and overcome all the lower level emotions through this physical body, we have to experience it in a body. Once we've overcome all of those, now we're awake, we're aware, we're in harmony, we're in balance, we have total command over the body. That's resurrection.
Okay, let's talk about the process. How long is the process? I make sure we have enough time on the show.
We could go through the process of tapping into the higher self in about maybe 10 minutes.
Okay, let's do it. I think the audience would love to hear this.
Yeah. So the best way to tap into your higher self is to get out of your head, because you can't think your way there. You have to experience it. And so I'm just going to ask everybody to get out of their head, just drop down out of your mind a little bit and drop your awareness and your focus down inside of your body. So let's start at the top of the head then. And let's just imagine an imaginary leaf, like a spiritual leaf hovering at the top of your head, and it's made of energy, and so it's just going to melt right through your skull. And as you breathe, I want you to follow that falling leaf down through the center of your body. Breathe in deep, breathe out long, and follow that leaf behind your eyes, through your face, down through your throat. Slow the breath way, way down. Breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. And as you go down through the heart center, I want everybody to just drop their shoulders. Relax your face. Open up some space a little bit. Let's roll our heads around on the top of our shoulders. You want to look for tension and relax that tension, soften it, and breathe. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Drop your shoulders, drop your awareness down into the upper gut. Keep going. Let your arms become limp and like wet noodles, and just keep going down through the lower gut. I'm going to have you rest like you just sat down on the ocean floor. I'm going to have you rest at the base of the spine where the perineum is. So the base of the spine, just think about your tailbone. That's it. Breathe in, breathe out. Think about your tailbone. In Kundalini, they believe that this is a connecting point to your higher self. There's one in the heart. There's one in other places in your body as well, but we're going to use the one at the base of the spine because that region is all about safety and stability and security. So just sink into the hips. Look for tension. If you're storing tension in your shoulders or your back or your upper gut, just move around a little bit until you soften those muscles. Let go, let go, let go. Breathe out nice and long. So I should hear wind coming through everybody's lips. Dropping down, 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 down. Good. When you get to the base of the spine, we're going to look for a feeling. This isn't just visual. I want you to look for the feeling of expansion now. So let's pretend that your awareness at the base of the spine, as you're resting there and you're letting go of tension, we're going to look for the feeling of expanding. So pretend there's a big, brilliant ball of light there at the base of the spine. And now as you breathe, push that light out in every direction. So I'm going to ask you, with your light inside of your center, from the top of the head to the base of the spine to the bottoms of your feet, push that light out in every direction so that you take up more space in front of you, behind you, above you, below you. It really helps to use the exhale to push that light out. And I want you to see if you can fill up the room with your light. Dropping down to the base of the spine, expanding out, out, out. So Doug, I'm going to ask you a question. Where does your light end and God's light begin?
Well, that's a good question. I'm not sure I have the answer to that, except
Or does
that
it?
Or does it? Yeah, that's the question, does it?
Does it just integrate?
I would think so.
Yeah. Well, we know God's light is everywhere,
Yes.
in and around and through all things. So as you push your light out, your light connects with the light that is throughout the universe. So I want everybody to just take a minute to feel the expansiveness of that, feel the oneness. You are now one with everything in the universe right now in your conscious awareness. You're one with everything, good, bad, light, dark, apples, oranges, trees, grass, people that you think are bad, people that you think are good. You're now one with all of it. Breathe in, breathe out, push your light out more and more and more. Now, I want you to give me adjectives. Tell me, what does that feel like for you to be in the body, dropped down, expanded out?
I'm working hard at it. And that was going to be my question. Do you find that there are some people that this works really well for and they experience it, and other people that just don't for some reason?
Yeah. Sometimes if you're bumping up against some resistance or a block to the feeling of it, it means that you're struggling to drop down out of your brain, out of the intellect. So the only way is to just practice that a few times a day, to drop out of the intellect, get into your body. It's more about feeling the presence. And you're probably going to get feedback from your listeners. People are going to go, that was amazing. It felt like home. It felt like peace. It felt like joy, love, bliss, whatever. People have all kinds of ways to describe it. But yeah, if you're still struggling with it, it just means you maybe you have some inner work to do, some blockages to release or to resolve, or you just need to practice a little more dropping out of the intellect and into the intuition a little bit more than what you're used to. Because maybe you might not be used to dropping into the etheric or the intuition. Intellect might be one of your gifts and you're used to being there. So it could be one of a million different things.
Well, and I think a lot of people probably struggle with that, because even this belief system of recognizing the goodness within you. I know as I've been looking at different things, I keep thinking I'm going to write a book, and it starts out being aware. Being aware, and then the next step is be courageous, be willing to actually do the work, and then obviously you will be free and joyous and all of that type of thing. But it takes work. Have you found that in most cases, and even for you, what was interesting, you talked about what you were going through, but then you mentioned that you got a coach to help you. Do you find that this process, because I know that there's a lot of people that talk about this is just a self process that you can do on your own and so forth. Do you find that it really helps to have a coach such as yourself to really help process through that?
Yeah. Yes. I absolutely do. I think that's why human beings were hardwired from the get-go to need each other, to lean on each other, learn from each other, guide one another, and hold space for someone. If you're doing this work on your own, it's a much different experience than if someone is holding space for you and they're seeing you and witnessing you, and maybe even sharing perspective from an external, seeing things that maybe you don't see, and just holding that loving space for you. That's such a healing place to enter into with another human being, and it's valuable as it could possibly be. So yes, I am a coach. So yes, I do recommend it, but I also, when I need to do my inner work, I also reach out to those that I know that can hold that space for me.
So two are much more powerful than one.
Yeah. I think there's just something beautiful about being in the presence of another human being that's willing to witness you, not judge you, and hold space for you, and then guide you if they have the tools to take you from where you are to where you want to go. Man, there's so much value in that. I have hired coaches in my life before for business and for healing and other things, and I've spent a lot of money in my life on coaching, and I can't think of anything more valuable that I to this date have ever invested my time and resources into, because if people have tools and they know how to take you from point A to point B and you don't know how to get there, there's such value in that. In literally, like, my mentor, what it felt like for me was I was in a black hole. I thought I was gonna die. Like, I remember even saying to my husband, I feel like I'm just not gonna wake up one of these days. Like, I'm running out of vitality to the point where I just don't even know if I'm gonna have energy to wake up in the morning. And that scared him. It scared me. And we hired this mentor, and he literally took me by the hand, reached down into that big black hole and pulled me out. I don't know that I could have come out of that.
Yeah, I think a lot of times, as you say, if we tend to be more analytical, intellectual, it's really tough to move from that perspective into a more internal self type of
Yeah.
perspective.
But
So,
Doug,
yeah,
don't underestimate yourself, because it's a lot easier than you might think. It might just take a few sessions of someone walking you through it a little more and just practicing it a little more. Um, I work mostly with women. Women, for the most part, are very in touch with the etheric, the spiritual, the emotional aspects of themselves, so it's a little easier for them to get in. But I have noticed too that men have intellectual gifts. I mean, you are gifted in processing data and knowledge and that. And so, but when you learn to tap into your spiritual side of yourself, the feminine side of you, then that brings wisdom into the knowledge that comes through the masculine side of you. So it is definitely possible. It just might take a little bit of practice and maybe a little bit of just removing some blockages, mental blockages that might be there. So, yeah.
well, and I think the point that I was trying to make there too is that you can't do it on your own, because if you try to do it on your own, sometimes you just quit because you get discouraged. Whereas if you have a coach there to kind of nurse you along and move you along, and as you say, hold space there for you, I think it makes a huge difference. Let me ask you a question. You've had a couple of out-of-body experiences, right?
Yeah.
How has that affected your overall thought process and belief system of this world and of this experience?
That's a great question. So after I had my first out of body experience, and again, I didn't go into heaven and talk with the angels or anything. I just popped out of the body for just a brief moment and got perspective and awareness, like what you talked about, awareness
Right.
of a different aspect of myself that I had never even considered before. I didn't even know I had access to that. How it's changed me is it's given me a different lens. Like, I don't view the world in the same way that I did. It has thinned the veil, definitely, for me. The veil is a lot thinner. I have more access to my own inner gifts and talents and creativity within me, that I more so than I had before. Because I don't know that I was really identifying with the true self. I think I was coming up with a false identity and trying to project that out into the world. And you can only do that for so long before you have a breakdown, because it's not really you. The beauty of this work, though, quantum healing, is you learn to go within and you drop into the awareness and expand it out. Um, it is it is so much like having an out of body experience, because your awareness is penetrating the body. You're going beyond the body, beyond the intellect. And so what I love about it is I had to pop out of the body to learn this. But now when I teach my students this this process, I teach them to go deep inside of their bodies to have the same exact experience and get the same results.
And did you find that it was, I mean, as people, I find that as people suddenly come up with new thought processes, new experiences, new insights, sometimes that is a major blockage that they hit. Did you experience that at all, where you really had to start changing your way of thinking, and how easy was that to do? Or did you find that there was some struggle with that? And what would you tell people that are, for instance, that are listening today that have never thought about this concept, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, how do I do that? Because this is an entirely anti what I have believed and thought my whole life.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a loaded question. So I'll answer that question with a story.
Okay.
When I first, after I went through my mentoring with my coach, Joshua, I went through his course and got certified in quantum healing. And one of the things we had to do was work with a partner a couple times a day. So we were clearing and processing beliefs, old beliefs. We were clearing and processing stuck, unprocessed emotion that was not resolved. We were clearing and processing mindsets, paradigms, mentality. So you can go into the body and find that stuff, engage with the energy, process it. And we were doing that. And I was doing it multiple times a day, several times a day for about 6 months. And at the end of that 6 months, I kind of took a break and went, whoa, who am I? Where am I? What am I? It was almost like someone had picked me up and put me on a different planet, and I had to get my bearings again. It's not like I had to learn how to rewire my brain or rethink again. It was that I had a new vantage point, a new perspective, and a new way of thinking, because I wasn't being hindered by unprocessed gunk, the filters, right? The filters were gone. And for me, it was a little bit concerning for me, because I was born and raised in my specific religious culture my whole life, and kind of programmed to believe and think a certain way. And I had to really go back through and decide, okay, do I still believe that? Is that still real for me? Is it still true for me? And now how do I see it? And am I going to own that belief as my own now, rather than the awareness that it was conditioned into me, that it was programmed into me, or that I was conditioned to believe that way? I lost a lot of that. I lost a lot of the conditioning and the programming and the mindset that was given to me by my parents and by my culture and by society. And there was some freedom to that, but also an unfamiliarity. I felt like I was treading a new water and standing on a new planet. But at the same time, it was a wonderful feeling, because now I know that the beliefs, the feelings, the emotions, the way I filter and see the world now is my own. It's very sovereign.
Well, and I think this whole concept of the art of becoming,
Yeah.
for people to realize, as you say, that there's that divine within each one of us, there's that goodness within each one of us that is at a much higher level potentially than any of us can really understand. And then to be able to go through the process that you went through and recognize that, you know what, by really becoming you have an entirely different vision and experience of what's going on in your life as well as others. I think that's wonderful. I
Yeah.
really
So for
do.
your listeners, I would invite you all to go back inside, drop down to the base of the spine, expand out, and just breathe in that space of expansion for a few moments, and take the time in your own time when you can, but just be. Just spend time with yourself and just be, and feel what that feels like to just be. You know, when Christ condescended to come to this earth, one of the things that he was known to have said, and God said, even in Holy Writ, I am that I am. I am. He didn't say I do. I just am. And there was nothing after that statement of I am a father, I am a God, I am a whatever. He didn't have to define the I am. He just is. And that's a powerful place to operate from, to come from, to experience life from. Oftentimes, we think that we are this doing and not a being. When I ask people, who are you? To really consider, look inside, and I ask them, who are you? They will say all the things they do. I'm a
Yep.
mom, I'm a
Yep.
teacher, I'm a friend, I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer, I'm a this, I'm a that. And really they're just describing the things they do. You are not a doing. That is not who you are. And so what I tell my clients over and over and over when they're struggling in life and they're trying to get through the brute force of the doing, I tell them to slow down and just be.
Well, and what I find in so many cases is, as we talk about beingness and doingness, so often, in fact, I've made this comment a couple of times, and you brought in Christ, so I will use him as an example. Did he do what he did so that he could be Christ? Or did he do what he did because he was Christ? And I think it goes to what you were talking about, I am. And as people are looking at their own lives and recognizing that whatever they're doing, whatever activities they're involved in, whatever's happening to them, the question is this who I am? Or is this what I'm doing? And do I need to discover who I am if I want to change the outcome of what I'm
Yes.
doing?
Do you know what's profound about what you just said is that the doing is born out of the being. And so
Yes.
whatever it is that you do in this life, in this dimension, whether it's good or bad, whatever you do is coming from the level of awareness of who you are. So Christ did the things, it was a byproduct of who he is. And it should be the same way for us. If we can learn how to tap into the beingness of who we just are, then intuition will govern the doing. The doing will just be a byproduct of who you be.
Amen to that. And guess what? We are out of time.
Wow, we did good.
So, what's the message you'd like to leave with the audience? And how
Oh.
can they reach you specifically?
They can go to janetthurgood.com. There's 2 T's, Janet and Thurgood.com. They can also go to greaterlife.greaterimpact.com, and they can find out about quantum healing and the certification program that I have. My final thoughts, my takeaway from this conversation is just be. Learn how to tap into that and come from that place, not from up here. Come from down deep inside of your soul.
And you have a Tuesday morning program. Can you share with how people could find out about that? Because that one's free, right?
Yeah, I do teach a free class every Tuesday morning. We talk about all kinds of awesome topics in there. They can actually register for that class by going to janetthurgood.com. And on that front page of my website is the registration, and they'll get emails to connect them to that class.
Wonderful. Janet, this has been amazing. I really appreciate you being on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, and thank you for all that you're doing for people.
Yes.
I think that's
Take
wonderful.
care.
Folks, thanks for listening. We hope you really enjoy it, and we look forward to having you join us again.